All right. What I think we will do, guys, let's just get started anyway. And if James jumps on, he can kind of duck in whenever he wants to. Okay. All right. So you guys, sweet and good to go.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. So what we're going to be discussing for the first little bit here is some of the physiological adaptations or improvements that you're going to see in some of these fitness components long term over time. Okay. So we're not talking here about what's going to happen at a single exercise session. We're going to be talking about what's going to happen over 3, 6, 12, etc. months. Okay.
Yep.
So the first one that we're looking at, guys, is body composition. Yeah. So what do we understand about, like, if someone says body composition, what does that mean to you guys?
Muscle and fat.
Yeah. So the relationship between sort of muscle and fat in your body. Yeah, that's exactly it. So your body composition essentially looks at three things. It looks at your body fat levels. It looks at your lean muscle mass. It does look at hydration levels as well. It also looks at your bone density, right? So obviously through positive physiological outcomes over time, we're going to get decreased body fat levels. Yeah, that's the first thing that we're going to see, okay? And hopefully we're going to see a corresponding increase in lean muscle mass, yeah, LMM. Yeah, so that's really important, okay? So make sure you tap those down. Decreased body fat, increased lean muscle mass. And the last one is obviously increased bone density, and that's important for perhaps older clients, people who've got osteoporosis, people are looking to try and strength train and build their bone density and reduce the risk of sort of falls and fractures and things like that, right? So how I explain this concept to my clients is it's not so much about the total weight that gets lost sometimes, especially when your clients have only got a couple of kilos to lose, yeah? It's more about what sort of changes in body composition can we make? Right. So, for example, if your client loses 2 kilos of fat and then puts on 2 kilos of muscle, let's say in an 8-week period, right? The scale's going to say exactly the same, but the body composition change has actually been 4 kilos. Does that make sense? Because we've lost 2 kilos of fat and we've gained 2 kilos of muscle. Right. So that's how I like to reframe things. With your real obese, overweight clients, obviously they've got a stack of weight to lose. So we want to look at those numbers, just weight loss, weight loss, weight loss. But in some of those clients that are looking for those small changes, you want to be looking at that. Okay. There's a relationship between how much is fat loss and at the same time, how much muscle's been put on. Okay. Flexibility. This should make sense. So obviously long term, we're going to get increased joint range of motion. Okay. So increased range of motion in our joints, we're going to get increased mobility. And probably the last one that we might see here is decreased injury risk. Yeah, because, lack of flexibility is one of the key determinants in injury risk in a lot of clients as well. Okay, so increasing range of motion in your joints. Flexibility, as I'm sure you guys are aware, it's something that you've just got to put in the time. Yeah, you can't just stretch for 5 minutes a day and think that it's going to do something. Like the body needs to react and respond to consistent, continual stimulus. And it's the same with training, lifting weights, and it's exactly the same with stretching. Okay, the third one, guys, is muscular strength. Okay, so if you were to explain to a client, like, what is muscular strength? Like, what is it at a physiological level? Andrew, do you have any idea?
In muscular strength?
Yeah, so what is it in a physiological term? Like, what is the muscle doing when we're improving strength?
Yeah, it's getting bigger. It's getting more powerful.
Yeah, bigger, more powerful. Yeah, so there's some of the byproducts, but the number one thing that muscular strength is, we're getting an increased rate of force production, right? So what we're saying is that muscle is able to contract with more force every time. Yeah. So consider when we get stronger on a bicep curl, our bicep muscle is able to contract with more force, therefore overcoming 40 kilos, then 45 kilos, and 50 kilos, yeah? So the big thing here is we're getting an increased force production in the muscle, okay? So sometimes you can get stronger without actually getting a lot bigger. Usually you get a bit of both, yeah? But sometimes you see those guys that are like really quite small but are actually really strong, that strength to weight ratio, because they've got a real good increased force production in their muscle, okay? Another thing that you're going to see here, and this is going to be an answer for a lot of them, is we're going to get what's called an increased motor unit activation. So what a motor unit is, it's nerves sending signals to muscles. Yeah. So strength, when you improve your strength, what actually happens is your nervous system gets better at sending signals to your muscles, right? So the better, the faster, the stronger signals get sent to your muscles, the more force those muscles can produce.
Yep.
Okay. And then the last one, guys, as you said, Andrew, you said muscle size. You will get a bit of that. So that's increased muscle hypertrophy. Yeah, that word hypertrophy, or the cross section. So the diameter of our muscles gets bigger in size. So you can include that one as well. But that's usually a byproduct. Okay, because you can get stronger without getting classically really big, because we're looking at the force production there. Okay, so that's strength. Okay, so if we look at the next one, Logan, muscular endurance, how would you explain to a client what muscular endurance is? Because it's like the opposite end of the scale, yeah?
Would it be like the muscle performing something over an extended period of time?
Yeah, so it's an increased rate of muscle contractions before fatigue. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're able to contract that muscle, not forcefully, but continuously over and over again before reaching fatigue. Yeah. So you can see there my first point there. It's an improved contractile rate of muscle before fatigue. So basically the muscle can contract over and over and over again before it gets fatigued. Okay. So that's what muscular endurance is. Okay. The second one, which is an important one as well, is your body's ability to tolerate lactate, or lactic acid. You guys know what lactic acid is? I'm sure you're aware of it.
Yep.
When training exercise, when you're working hard, that lactic acid is the byproduct of muscle contraction and starts to pull in your muscles. The burning sensation, it causes fatigue. So your body's able to tolerate more and more lactate as you become more and more endurant. Yeah, both cardio and muscular. So that's really important. We want to improve our body's ability to tolerate lactate, which is why we've got to train at those levels where it does really hurt. Yeah, otherwise, we're not going to see any progress. Okay. Then the last one here is when your muscles become more endurant, they become more efficient. So what that means is they're using less energy to perform the same amount of work. Yeah. And that's another really important long-term concept behind training. Yeah. Is we've got less effort to do more work. Okay. Okay, so the next one, guys, and James, you can just jump up to speed here. We're down to cardiovascular endurance. Okay, so it's very similar concept with muscles becoming more endurant, but now we've got to think about the cardiovascular system. So what two systems are involved with the cardiovascular system, Andrew? What are we talking about here?
Lungs.
Yeah, and so it's the heart and the lungs. So what we want to look at here is the improvements in efficiency in our heart and our lungs. Okay, so the first one that we're going to see is through cardiovascular endurance is you're going to get increased blood circulation, right? So the heart and lungs are going to be more effective at circulating the blood around your body. And that means we're getting oxygen out of the blood and into the working muscles to be used as energy, okay? So one of the adaptations here for cardiovascular endurance is increased blood circulation, okay? The next two are important concepts with the heart, okay? The first one is what I call stroke volume, okay? So what stroke volume is, guys, it's the amount of blood your heart pumps each beat, okay? So when your heart beats once, that's the amount of blood that it pumps out, okay? Now, an average heart pumps about 70 to 80 mils of blood each beat. Not that much. But if you think about it, if your heart beats 60 times a minute, you're pumping 4 to 5 liters of blood throughout your body, okay, every minute, right? So as you train, your heart expands and it actually becomes bigger. It actually grows, right? So your stroke volume will get bigger. So a normal person's stroke volume might be 60 mils of blood per minute, whereas you guys are fit and healthy athletes, your stroke volume might be 110, 120 milliliters per heartbeat, right? So if your stroke volume is going up, which means your body's pumping more blood each beat, what happens to your heart rate? Does it go up or does it go down?
Yeah.
It goes down, yeah. Long term, your heart rate, so your resting heart rate goes down. Does that make sense? Because the heart's pumping more blood each beat, it doesn't have to pump as often, okay? And that's why you see when you improve your cardiovascular conditioning, your resting heart rate goes down, and also your maximum heart rate will go down. People think that as you get fitter, your maximum heart rate just goes up and up and up and up and up, but it actually comes down because your heart literally gets bigger. So it pumps more blood each beat, okay? So they're just important concepts to understand there. So improved stroke volume and cardiac output is the amount of blood you pump each minute, right? So that's all going to get improved. That's going to go up. The third one, guys, is we talked about this before, is the lactic acid, okay? So we're going to get increased lactate tolerance, which means as we become more fit, our body can tolerate higher levels of lactic acid. You guys know what it's like, repeat 200s, repeat 400s, Malcolm's, all that sort of stuff, yeah? Legs are burning, lungs are burning, but you're building your ability to tolerate it, right? And the last thing there is buffering. So what buffering means is you're clearing it out of your system faster, yeah? As you guys are probably will feel and know, one of the big ways you notice you're getting fitter is that you recover faster between efforts, yeah? Remember like the first day of preseason where you're doing sprints and you're gassed in between efforts, right? But as you get fitter and fitter, you recover faster. Now, why do you recover faster? Because your body's clearing that lactic acid out of your system quicker and quicker, okay? So these are all important adaptations. And the last one there is, guys, improved gas exchange in the lungs. So what that means is we're taking the oxygen out of the lungs and we're getting it into the bloodstream, right? And that gets improved through exercise, okay? So this is physiology, right? So this is, I think, really important concepts to understand because clients might ask you these sorts of questions like, what does it mean when I get fitter, right? And you want to start to talk about the fact that your body's becoming more efficient, you know, your heart's getting bigger, it's pumping more blood, you're able to tolerate more lactic acid. These are the sorts of things that you want to try and, you know, really understand and talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are we good on that one? James, are you up to date with the cardiovascular endurance one?
Yeah. Getting there, mate.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I'll just move on to balance and you can just keep tapping away at that, okay? So balance, guys, all right? So again, if I try and get you to sort of explain what balance is, Logan, what would be your definition of balance?
I don't know. I'm trying to describe it without using the actual word. Maybe like someone's weight being evenly distributed.
Yep. So that's a component of balance. What balance actually all boils down to is joint stability, doesn't it? Think about it. If all your joints are stable, right, you'll be balanced. Okay.
Yep.
So it means the muscles surrounding those joints are strong. Yeah. So the first thing that we see with balance training is increased joint stability. So for example, doing things like single leg holds and stuff like that, the muscles that surround the hip and the knee and the ankle, they get stronger, which provides stability for that joint, right? You guys have probably all heard that, right? Especially like when you've injured, you've got to strengthen the muscles around the knee, that sort of stuff, okay? The second one is we're getting more effective, what's called motor unit recruitment for fine motor tasks. So small movements, right? So small, tiny movements, our body gets more effective at sending the right signals from our nerves to our muscles. Okay, so that's what we call that motor unit recruitment. Motor units are nerve signals that get sent from the nerves to the muscles. They're called motor units, MUs. Okay. The third one is core strength, because that's a byproduct of balance. That makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, for you to be balanced, you need to be braced and rigid through your core and through your trunk and midsection, right? So obviously increased core strength is really important, right? And then the last one for balance is your body's ability to stay balanced in unstable environments. Does that make sense? So if you're on one leg and you closed your eyes and I pushed you, right? Your body's trying to figure out where that force is coming from, and it's trying to activate all these different muscles to keep you balanced. Okay, so that's body awareness, and that gets improved through balance training. Okay, and there's a word for body awareness called proprioception. Have you guys heard of that word before?
Yep.
Yeah. Proprioception is basically your body's ability to understand where it is in space, and that's something that's trainable, right? So we train that in clients, you know, balance training for older adults, etc. Okay, we all sweet with that one, guys?
Yep.
Yep. Andrew, you all good?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, agility. Okay, so again, these are interesting concepts because you probably know what they all are, but they can be quite hard to describe, yeah? James, I'll ask you, mate, what is your definition of agility?
The speed and control of which you can change direction effectively.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, so pretty much exactly what I wrote for that second one. It's it's your ability to change direction without losing speed. So I'm not sure if you read that or not, mate, but that's exactly
I didn't actually, mate.
That's very good. That's very good. But literally, that's what agility is. So if you think about agility, it's how can I change direction without losing speed, right? So all your 3-cone drills, all your zigzags, all that sort of stuff, the people that slow down then have to accelerate again, yeah? So if you can slow down the least, then you don't lose that speed. You don't have to accelerate again. So that's what agility is, okay? So we increase our ability to change direction without a loss of speed, yeah? We improve what's called our neuromuscular adaptations to external stimulus. It's a fancy way of saying we're reacting to the environment around us. Think about a football game where all of a sudden you have to cut or make a quick change in direction. You're responding to an external stimulus, someone coming to tackle, changing shoulders, changing direction on you, and you're having to change that movement as well. And then obviously what's important with agility is all fast twitch muscle fibers. Yeah, it's not slow twitch. Slow twitch is in marathon running. So we increase our fast twitch muscle fiber activation. So that's why agility has to, if you want to improve agility, you have to train. You've got to train that fast twitch muscle fibers. Okay, can't improve your agility by going slow. You got to go fast. So these next three all kind of build into each other. Yeah. Okay. So the next one, guys, is power. Power. Okay. So when you're thinking power, Andrew, what are you thinking about in the gym? When you're thinking about power training, what type of exercise are you thinking about?
Movement. Like exactly, or?
Yeah, just like some specific exercise that you might do for power.
You just bring the weight down.
Yeah.
Weight down and make the speed of movement quicker.
Yeah, exactly right. So could you give me some like exercise examples? Like what would you do for power in the gym?
You can go jump squats or jump deadlifts.
Yep.
Or Smith machine bench rows.
Yeah, bench rows. Yeah, great. Yeah, awesome. Okay, yeah. So that's all. Yeah, that's all. That's all. Medicine ball slams, all your Olympic lifts. So your hang cleans, power cleans, clean jerks, all that sort of stuff. Snatches. Yep. That's all examples of power. Okay. So what power is, it's strength multiplied by speed. Does that make sense? So it's force output, but also how fast you can move that weight from point A to point B, right? So that's why when you train power, you can't typically train power at maximal weight, right? Why not?
Yep.
So you said why, Andrew? Why can't you train power at maximal weight?
It's maximum weight. You can only
because you can't move it quickly.
Lift that anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you're flat out trying to lift it once, you can't move it quickly, 1, 2, or 3 times, right? So that's why for power, we usually bring the weights right down, but we focus on the speed of movement, right? And with power training, with box jumps and cleans and all this sort of stuff, once the speed of movement starts to slow down, you should finish your set, right? Because that means you're losing the quality of the exercise and the output. Okay, so increased force output of muscles is another improvement, obviously just like strength. Increased strength to weight ratio. Okay, so you're moving your body, right, through a range of motion quicker and faster. So that's power training. Just like agility, guys, it's fast twitch muscle fibers. Again, power is all fast twitch, right? Think you have 100-meter sprinters, your explosive athletes, your bobsledders, your shot putters, javelin, all that sort of stuff. And then again, you're getting an increased speed of neuromuscular signaling, which means the signals you're sending from your brain to your muscles, that's getting faster. And again, it's trainable, right? Now, Logan, when would you train power in an exercise session? Would you train it at the start, at the middle, or at the end of the workout?
Maybe the middle.
Okay, why would you say that?
Maybe not at the start because you're not that, or if you do a warm up, maybe at the start.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my thinking.
Yeah. So look, power training should be done after a warm up at the start of the session, usually. Yeah. Okay, because that's when your nervous system's at its freshest, right? Think about it. If you did really like a really heavy strength piece and then you're trying to do power after that, the nervous system's going to be very fatigued. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that's why you want to really focus on the power stuff at the start. Yeah. And then you might do a little bit of strength work after that. Okay.
Sweet. Yep.
Good. Okay. Speed. Okay. So speed, again, just rate of change it's just movement from A to B. Yeah. So again, when we train speed, we're looking at fast twitch fiber activation again. We're looking at lower body power typically because speed is usually locomotion, movement, right? So improving our lower body power. So lower body power exercises like box jumps, like hang cleans, like, jump squats, that all improves your speed, obviously. Yep. Speed is also, if you think about increasing speed, what you've got to do is put more force through the ground. That's how you get faster. Yeah. So we increase our force transfer through the ground. That's why deadlifts are so good for improving your speed, because deadlifts all about pressing your body through the ground to lift that weight up. Yeah. So that's why sprinters do deadlifts. Okay. And then obviously what we're going to get with speed as well, if you're training speed, we're going to improve stride cadence. So cadence means number of strides per minute. That's going to come up. And also an improved stride length. Okay. People that struggle with their speed, their cadence is always too slow. We've got to get their legs moving a bit faster. And again, just like what we've talked about before, this is all trainable. Yeah, okay? So agility, power, and speed, those three concepts kind of tend to go together. All right, but understanding what's happening within the body for these are important. Are we good with those, guys?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. All right, last three, reaction time. Okay? So reaction time is literally just responding to an external stimulus. Okay, in football, we'd spend a lot of you guys do. There's a lot of you responding to reaction, right? Reaction time stuff. Okay, so again, it's something that gets trained. Okay, it's increased fast twitch muscle fiber activation, because reacting to something is all fast twitch, and again, it's increased speed of neuromuscular signaling. So we're sending the signals from the nerves to the muscles to do something. Okay, somebody changes direction, your eyes notice that, the signal from the eyes goes to the brain, comes down through your spinal cord, through your muscles, tells your legs to change direction. Okay, so that's reaction time. All right, coordination. Okay, so coordination is almost like a combination of all of these elements together. Yeah, so again, very similar, increased efficiency of neuromuscular signaling. So we're sending the right signals from the nerves to the muscles. Now, the difference with coordination, guys, is coordination requires you to contract certain muscles in certain orders, right? Think about throwing a ball, right? If you were throwing a tennis ball overhand, right, you have to synchronize the movement from your pecs to your deltoids, to your biceps, to your triceps, to your forearms, to your wrists, to your fingers. That all has to happen in order. If that happens out of order, you don't throw, right? Okay. So that concept, that the muscles get synchronized to work together. Okay. And again, that's why coordination is a skill. Okay. You have to train it over and over and over again. Okay. That's why, it doesn't transfer from right-handed throwing to left-handed throwing in most people, because you haven't trained that skill. And because you haven't trained that motor unit recruitment. Okay. That concept, that third thing, that concept of like greasing the groove. You guys know what I mean by grease the groove? Like if you practice something over and over and over again, yeah, it becomes automatic, right?
Yeah.
So that's what coordination is. It's just repetitive tasks over and over and over again. Okay. And then the last one here, guys, is proprioception, which we talked about before, which is that improved awareness of our body position in space. So knowing where our body is at all times. Okay. Think about like gymnasts, think about dancers, think about those types of athletes. They have fantastic proprioception. They know where they are at all times. Okay. So what is that? They've got increased balance. They've got stability. They've got coordination. They've got motor unit control. And then what happens long-term with proprioception, the last one here, guys, is you have a decreased awareness of your movement. Yeah, because the movement becomes automatic. Okay. You can think about things that you guys do on a footy field. When a guy moves this direction, you automatically do this. Or when a pass comes your way, you automatically fingers up, arms out, catching, bracing, transferring, etc. And you do that without even knowing it. Why? Because you've trained it and you've done it over and over and over again. Okay. So with those last two guys, think about a client that perhaps has had an injury or even more serious, has had like a stroke. Yeah. So you would have to be working really hard on re-coordinating, getting them used to these different new movement patterns, sending those signals from the nerves to the muscles over and over again to really retrain them and reskill them in these movements. Okay. All right. So that's the physiology of a lot of adaptations. So what we can do also here is you can reframe these as benefits, you know? So someone says, oh, why are we training for proprioception? Like, why are we doing these weird balance exercises? And we go, okay, well, because we're improving our awareness of our body position, we're increasing our stability, we're sending more effective signals from our nerves to our muscles. So you can reframe these concepts as benefits when you explain these sorts of things to your clients. Okay. Guys, are we sweet to move on from this one?
Yep.
Yeah. Andrew, James, all good?
Sweet, man.
Yeah, mate.
Awesome. Fantastic. Alrighty, so let's go through some of the actual movement patterns here. Okay, so we're going to have a look at the following table. We're going to look at a movement pattern. We're going to look at the major joints that are being moved. We're going to talk about the actions and the muscles that are used. And then think about the concept of this is in the concentric phase. Okay, so the first one is a front squat. Okay, so as you can see here, front squat, anterior chain, lower body dominant movement. Okay, the three major joints that are working in this movement are the hip joint, the knee joint, and the ankle joint. Okay, so the concentric phase of a front squat is when we're at the bottom of the front squat and we're coming up. Yeah, okay, because the lowering phase is the eccentric phase. We should have done this in Cert 3, guys should be all over this by now. The lowering phase is the eccentric phase, and then coming up is the concentric phase. Okay, so as we come up, the hip, right? Because the hip is in flexion at the bottom, it comes up into extension. Okay, so hip extension, the main muscles used for that are the glutes and the hamstrings. Okay, they're very powerful drivers of hip extension. Okay, it's glute strength. The knee is extending. Okay, and every time you extend the knee, you use the muscles in the front, as you can see there on the image, the quadriceps. Yeah, and the ankle actually moves slightly into plantar flexion. Because if you think about it, as you go down in your front squat, your knees move forward and then your knees move back. So your ankle joint has to move just slightly. So there's a small amount of work in the calf muscles there through plantar flexion. That's the soleus and that's the gastrocnemius. Okay, so they're the major muscles used in that exercise in the concentric phase when we're coming up. Okay, and it's going to be very similar from a front squat to a deadlift in terms of the muscles that are used. Okay, we sweet with that one, guys?
Yep.
Yep, okay. Next one, bench press. Okay, so I've just isolated two major joints here. Obviously, guys, the shoulder joint is the primary joint that's used here, okay? And you're also getting movement through the elbow joint, okay? So eccentric phase, the weight is lowering to the chest. Concentric phase, the weight is coming up. Yep. So we've got the shoulder joint here, guys, going through what's called horizontal adduction. Okay, so if you've been with me for Cert 3, adduction means adding to your body. Okay, so this is horizontal adduction. Okay, like a pec deck. So if you think about a bench press, that's horizontal adduction. Yeah. Okay, and the major muscle that's used there is the pec major. Okay, there's a little bit of pec minor, and there's a little bit of front deltoid there as well, anterior deltoid. Okay, and then obviously, guys, the elbow in the bench press goes through extension, yeah? And the major muscle group for the elbow extension is your triceps brachii, okay? So, you know, you should be able to try and pretty much be able to knock these out. Like if I was to ask you anywhere, like what are the joint actions and muscles used, the major ones, you can use those. Now, the wrist is also used in the bench press if you think about it, but does the wrist move during bench press? No, it's contracted isometrically. So you've got competing forces on your flexors and your extensors of your forearms, okay? Because they're contracting isometrically. The wrist shouldn't move through a bench press. Lat pull down. Okay, 3 joints. Most people forget about the third joint. So the first one is the shoulder, okay? The shoulder goes into adduction, and also because the elbows come behind you, it goes into extension, okay? So extension means the arm's going behind your body. So the shoulder goes into extension and adduction, as you can see there on the image, okay? And you can see the latissimus dorsi, the big lat muscles working, and you get a little bit of rhomboids working there as well. The rhomboids are the muscles that sit in between the shoulder blades, okay? So you could probably say that this would be an antagonist exercise to a bench press, yeah, because you're using the opposite muscle groups, which is why, you know, bench press, lat, pull down supersets are usually a pretty good idea because you're hitting the opposite muscle groups as you go, okay? The elbow is going into flexion, okay? So again, if elbow extension is triceps, elbow flexion is biceps, okay? And then the third one, guys, which is really important, is don't forget about the scapula, which is the shoulder blades, yeah? So the shoulder blades sit like this, and what the shoulder blades do is the shoulder blades rotate down when you pull down. And then when you come up, the shoulder blades rotate up, okay? So the lower traps help to rotate those shoulder blades down. If the shoulder blades don't rotate down, the shoulder gets stuck in the socket, yeah? And the shoulder can't move, okay? So think about it. When I'm pulling my arm down, my shoulder has to rotate to allow the shoulder to, the ball of the shoulder to glide in the socket. Okay, so that's the lat pull down. So shoulder, elbow, and the scapula, which is the shoulder blade. Okay. Last one, guys, deadlift. Okay, as you can see, basically, guys, the deadlift is the exact same concept as a front squat. It's just the front squat works the quads a lot more than the glutes, whereas the deadlift will work the glutes a lot more than the quads, okay? So if you have a look here, guys, deadlift, just like the squat, the hip goes into extension, which means the glutes, and the biceps femoris, which is the hamstring, okay, are involved. The knee goes into extension again, which means the quads are working on the way up, but not as much as a front squat. And then the ankle goes into slight plantar flexion, which means the gastrocnemius is working. We're actually going to, one of the next questions is going to talk about the main differences between the front squat and the deadlift in terms of the biomechanics. Okay, so let's move on, guys. So now we are going to talk about the biomechanical differences between the front squat and the deadlift. So we have a look here, front squat, all right? Anyone know who that is?
Is that
That's
Ivan Drago?
No, that's Tom Platz. He was a bodybuilder in the 1970s that had like the most ridiculous set of legs. Yeah, Quadzilla, massive front squat. So you can see there, big differences straight away. What are some differences that you notice from the overall positioning of a front squat compared to like a traditional Franco over here doing a deadlift? Yeah. So if we just have a look at those two images, what are some of the differences? What do you notice straight away with the front squat that's different from a deadlift?
Feet position.
Yeah, the feet position, that's more dependent on the lifter more than anything else. He might have his toes turned out a little bit, but what about like, think about the torso. What's happening at the torso, guys? That's not a great deadlift photo because he's halfway up, right? But can you see how there's a much more upright torso demand with the front squat? Yeah. So the torso demands because the weight is in front of us, it's anterior and it's elevated. There's much more of an upright torso demand, which means the front muscles in our core are going to be working a lot more than compared to a deadlift. Because if we're not engaged through the front of our shoulders and through our abs, we're going to lose that weight forward. Yeah. Okay. So that's the first thing you want to look at. The next thing you want to look at is the angle of the knee. Okay. So in a front squat, there's a lot more movement happening at the knee joint and a lot less movement happening at the hip joint. Okay. Whereas a typical deadlift, as you can see here, the knees stay almost semi-fixed the whole time. You know, like a Romanian deadlift, like a stiff leg deadlift. Yeah. The knees don't move that much, but it's the hips that do all the movement. Okay. So some basic differences again, guys, much more upright torso demand. Okay. Which means there's more stress on the anterior, the front portion of the body in the front squat. Yeah. There's much more of a bent over hip hinge demand in the deadlift. Yeah. So that means that there's more stress on the back of the body, the posterior chain. Okay. So you're going to get a lot more glutes, hamstrings, lower back in the deadlift, but you're going to get a lot more anterior deltoids, quads, rectus abdominis, six-pack sort of core stuff in the front squat. Yeah. Okay. So we'll have a look at some of these questions now. All right. So they're the two major differences. Okay. So postural changes. Okay. So this is what we talked about. The front squat demands a more vertical posture during movement. Yeah. Okay. So there's much more of an upright torso demand, because if you don't maintain an upright torso, you're going to lose that weight forward. Okay. And whereas the deadlift produces more of a, that should say, perpendicular action. Okay. So we're hinging a lot more at the hips. Yes. We have a lot more at the hips. We're going to be more perpendicular to the bar. Okay. More of a perpendicular action, changing from horizontal to vertical. Okay. So they're the basic postural changes. So front squat, vertical posture, upright torso demand. Deadlift, perpendicular posture, much more hip dominant movement. Okay, that's the first basic difference. Okay, and this is, we go through a little bit of biomechanics. Okay, so James, like I said, mate, front squats. What muscles are going to be primarily worked more in the front squat compared to the deadlift? Try not to look at the notes. Try not to look at the notes.
Quads and legs as opposed to lower back.
Yeah, exactly right. Because, like we said, because there's more movement at the knee, right? The quads are going to be working a lot harder in a front squat, whereas there's more movement at the hip in the deadlift. So there's more glutes, hamstrings, lower back. Okay, so you can see there, changes in muscle recruitment. Front squat requires more upper body postural muscles and quadriceps. Okay, more anterior chain. Anterior chain means the muscles at the front of your body, right? Where the deadlift recruits primarily posterior chain. So that's your lower back, your glutes, and your hammies. Which exercise do you think is harder for a beginner to learn, a front squat or a deadlift?
Front squat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why would you say that, James?
There's more moving parts, so
Yeah.
it needs more coordination.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Also, what you've always got to think about is beginner will typically come to you with bad posture. Yeah. So bad posture, their shoulders are going to be rolled forward. So it's really hard for them to create enough mobility through their shoulders to have the bar high enough without them falling forward. Yeah. So that's what the first thing you'll notice. So you've really got to work on clients' mobility with a front squat. You can fix that by having them hold like a kettlebell or a medicine ball, or even holding like a sandbag between their forearms. But the classic barbell front squat, a lot of people don't have the mobility to get into a really good position there. Yeah. Next one. Okay, changes in lever length. Okay, I kind of talked about this already. Yeah. The front, so we talk about is where is most of the leverage, which joint is most of the leverage coming from? Okay. Logan, what's the difference here? Where's most of the leverage coming from in these two movements?
The knee and the hip.
Yep, so the front squats, there's more in the knee or the hip?
The knee.
That's exactly right, yeah. So there's increased lever length of the knee due to forwards translation. So that means the knees are tracking forward. So where the increased leverage is coming from the knee, okay? And the shorter lever length is at the hip due to the upright spine, because you're trying to keep your hips up, you're trying to keep your spine upright, the hips don't actually move that much. You don't bend forward and back like you do in a deadlift, yeah? Okay, as you can see, obviously, guys, what we're trying to explain here, it's the complete opposite for the deadlift, yeah? Increased lever length is at the hip because you're over the bar and then you're trying to get upright, yeah? So posterior chain activation, glute dominance, and decreased leverage lever length at the knee because the hinge is coming from the hip, you know? A lot of people will do a deadlift and there's very minimal movement at the knee, especially in a Romanian deadlift or a stiff leg deadlift sort of variation. The knees don't really move that much. Okay, so that's the leverage there. Okay. Okay, so Number 4 is the stabilizing muscles. So which muscles are going to be stabilizing more in the front squat and more in the deadlift, okay? So again, because we've got the weight elevated in front of us in a front squat, our front of our core is going to have to work a lot harder to maintain that upright posture. Otherwise, it's going to collapse. We're going to be in trouble, yeah? So we get a lot more abs, a lot more rectus abdominis. TVA is the transverse abdominis. That's the deep core muscles and the external obliques. That maintains our trunk upright. They activate a lot more. They contract isometrically, okay? So we get a lot more stabilizing from the anterior chain, the front of our body. And as you would expect, the deadlift is the opposite. We use a lot more posterior chain stabilizers. So the erector spinae, our lower back muscles, our traps, and our rhomboids, they're important because they keep our shoulders locked back. Yeah? When deadlifts get really heavy, people lose their shoulders and they start to slump their shoulders forward because the muscles in their middle back aren't working hard enough. Okay? So we get more posterior chain stabilizers to maintain a neutral spine through the hip hinge sequence. Okay? So again, 2 movements that seem similar, but they're almost, in terms of the biomechanics, they're almost the complete opposite. While we're finishing that one, I might ask a question that leads into the last one to you, James. Which of these 2 movements, okay, front squat and deadlift, which one is a pushing movement and which one's a pulling movement?
Oh, the push is going to be the front squat because you're pushing it back up, obviously, and the deadlift is a pull straight up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so you're pushing the force away from the ground by pressing your feet into the floor, so the force goes through. So the front squat is a push dominant movement. That's the last question. Yeah. So the front squat is a push dominant movement, which is using your anterior chain, the front of your body, and mainly your quads. Yeah. And deadlift is a pull dominant movement. So you're pulling an inert weight from the floor. So therefore your posterior chain, your glutes and your hammies, that's the one that's working more. Okay, so they're push and pull dominant. So in saying that, you know, not a bad, again, as long as you don't go too heavy, not a bad superset option for opposing muscle groups, front squats into deadlifts. Pretty tricky, especially at heavy loads, but they actually work completely different biomechanical movement patterns. Okay, so push dominant versus pull dominant movement. All good? Okay, so the next one, guys, is looking at that neuron, okay, which is on your sheet, which is a nerve cell, okay? So that's what a nerve cell looks like, okay? Identify the number of structural components and explain their function, okay? So pretty straightforward stuff. This is stuff that you won't likely need to remember. There's only really one thing that I might explain in a little bit more detail here, okay? So the first one, number 1, they're called dendrites, okay? So if you think about this as a single nerve cell, what you've got to understand is this will connect to another nerve cell, connect to another nerve cell. And so your nerves are just a continual stream of these neurons, okay? So the dendrites are the little fingers at the end of the nerve that they receive the information or signal from the other neuron. So that's how the nerves connect, and that's how they send the signals all the way down and through. Okay, so the number 1 is the dendrites. I'll just leave this up for a few minutes, guys. Cell body is where the nucleus is. Axon terminals, number 3, they're the little things at the end that deliver the signal to either the muscles or to the other neuron. Number 5 is the axon. That's like the highway, right? That's like the way, the long part of the nerve cell where the signal gets sent down. And probably, guys, the most important thing to understand about these nerve cells is number 4, okay, which is the insulation. Yeah, that's called myelin. Myelin, M-Y-E-L-I-N. So I'm just talk about that for a minute or two, and I'll explain why. Because myelin is really important in a nerve cell because it acts as an insulator, right, of the cell, which allows the signal to be sent down quickly, right? So think about like a phone charging cable or a headphone cable, right? The reason why it's insulated was that if it wasn't insulated, the electrical activity would just go everywhere, yeah? Okay? So typically, the thicker the insulation on a cable or on a nerve cell, the faster the signal can get sent down that nerve cell. Does that make sense? Right? So that's myelin. Now, the good news is every time you innovate or use a nerve cell, right? Let's say you use a nerve cell over and over and over again, that nerve cell will build more myelin around it so that the signal can go faster and faster and faster. So every time you're learning a skill or doing a repetitive task or using the same nerve cells over and over again, what's actually happening is you're building more and more myelin, more and more cells around it so that the signal can be sent through faster and faster and faster and faster, okay? So that's when you improve coordination and response, reaction time, because that nerve cell is more insulated, okay? Now, there's a disease that attacks the myelin, right? It's a nervous system disease. Does anyone know the name of that disease at all? It's quite well known. A disease that attacks the myelin. So your body starts breaking it down.
Not MND, is it?
It's close. It's close. That's motor neuron disease. Have you guys heard of MS, multiple sclerosis?
Yeah.
Yeah, MS. So what actually happens with MS is your immune system attacks the myelin, right? So it attacks the myelin and it breaks it down. And then obviously all the nervous system signals start getting confused. You start losing signals here and there. And then you get a range of symptoms from numbness and tingling to complete loss of use of certain parts of your body, depending on how bad the MS is. And then they give you drugs to try and slow the immune response. Yeah. So anytime you hear about a disease that's autoimmune, what autoimmune means is instead of your immune system protecting yourself, it's mistakenly attacking yourself, right? So that's what MS is. I've got 2 clients that have MS. One is very highly functioning, and the other one is progressing quite rapidly, is almost in a wheelchair, yeah, because the disease is getting worse and worse. What happens is once the myelin gets eaten away, it becomes scarred, and it builds up scar tissue, and then the nerve doesn't function properly. Okay, so it's a pretty rough disease, MS, right? And it's usually progressive and degenerative, which means it usually gets worse and worse over time. Okay, so with my clients with MS, I do a lot of training on basic, repetitive, everyday tasks because I'm trying to rebuild and re-strengthen that myelin in their nervous system, right? So that's one of the concepts there, okay? So just fill in the rest of those, guys, all right? Great, so that's question 4. Okay, last couple here, guys. Just talking about different components of the nervous system, okay? Pretty simple stuff, okay? So the first thing is the central nervous system. So what the central nervous system is your brain and your spinal cord, okay? So this is what carries the motor signals and the sensory signals. So sensory signals are signals that come into your nervous system, and motor signals are signals that come out of your nervous system, okay? So sensory signals could be what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you touch, what you taste. Yeah, they're all sensory signals that come in. Yeah, they get processed in your brain. And then your motor signals move your muscles, move your mouth to make you talk, move your lungs to make you breathe, etc., etc. Okay, so that's the central nervous system. All right, then there's two parts of the nervous system as well. We break that down even further. And the first part is what we call the somatic nervous system. Okay, so the somatic nervous system is responsible for everything that you have voluntary control over. Okay, so all of your movement, everything you do, all your movement, how you talk, where you put your eyes, etc., how you move your body, your muscles, major muscle patterns, all that stuff is voluntary. You are telling your body to do it. Okay, so that is what we call the somatic nervous system. So that's responsible for voluntary controls of your muscles. Just like I said before, it consists of sensory nerves that brings the information in. And then it consists of motor nerves. That's what puts the information out. Okay, so information out means telling your body to do something. Okay, that's voluntary. All right. Okay, so you can probably understand if the somatic nervous system is your voluntary control of your muscles, yeah. Autonomic sounds like automatic to me, which would be the involuntary control. So what would be some actions in your body that is under involuntary control? Andrew, can you give me an example?
Involuntary.
Yeah. So what would be an action in your body that is completely involuntary? You have no mental control over it.
Goosebumps.
Yep. That's an involuntary control. Yep. Can anyone think of another one?
Of just muscles or anything in your body?
Well, yeah. Well, are there some muscles that are under involuntary control? Yeah.
Like your heart?
Yep. Heart's under involuntary control. Very good. You can't really tell your heart to increase it without actually sending a hormonal signal to it. Yeah. The easiest one to explain, guys, is digestion. Yeah. You're not eating food and then your brain's not telling your stomach to digest that food, is it? Right? That's all happening involuntarily. That's your autonomic nervous system that's taking care of that. Okay? So digestion, heartbeat, etc., sweating, goosebumps, all those types of things, that's involuntary control. You have no control over it. Okay? And this relies on the interplay or the combination between two nervous systems. Okay? You might have heard of these before, guys. One is called the sympathetic nervous system, otherwise known as the fight or flight system, right? And then the other one's called the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest or digest system, okay? Right? Right now, we're all sitting down, we're relaxed, we're learning, we're talking, we're typing, right? We're predominantly using that parasympathetic nervous system, right? Okay? If all of a sudden a lion walked into the room right now and you jumped up and you sprinted and jumped out the window, right? That's a short dose of the sympathetic nervous system. That's the fight or flight response, right? So usually we're in either one of two states. Yeah? Okay? So it's important to understand that there's always an interplay between those, okay? Sympathetic fight or flight is stressful. Parasympathetic rest and digest is relaxation. That's when you digest, it's when you rest, recover, etc., right? If you're under chronic stress, which is what a lot of clients can suffer from, that means their sympathetic nervous system is on all the time. You've got marital problems, you've got bills, you're not sleeping enough, you've got work stresses, you're drinking too much caffeine. All these sorts of things are just firing up that fight or flight system, right? Whereas resting, meditation, sleeping, going for walks, all that sort of stuff, that's all parasympathetic nervous system stuff. Okay? Right? So we want to make sure that we're balanced with both of those nervous systems over the course of the day. Okay? So I just want to show you this one, guys, and then we'll take a quick break. Okay? So this is what happens when one of the nervous systems is on, the parasympathetic nervous system. The blue one is the relaxed nervous system, right? The sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight nervous system, okay? So a few things that you can see. When you're on the right side, the red side, when you're sympathetic, your pupils dilate, okay? Let's think about this like evolutionarily, caveman style. Why would your pupils dilate when you're under stress? What happens to your pupils when they get bigger?
Receive more light.
Yeah, you receive more light so you can see better. So that's an evolutionary response for a stressful situation, because when we were cavemen, a stressful situation could mean we might die, right? So we need to quickly survey what's going on and choose an appropriate response. So your pupils dilate, yeah? And obviously the opposite, when you relax, your pupils constrict. Your heart rate goes up, makes sense, right? Adrenaline, boom, 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 boom. Heart rate goes down in parasympathetic. Your airways dilate, your airways open up. Why do your airways open up when you're stressed? Because your body wants oxygen to use as energy, yeah? You start to sweat, right? Why do we sweat? Why would sweat be an evolutionary response to stress? Think about cavemen again. I like to talk about this because I think this is quite interesting. This is like Darwinism stuff. Sweat.
And doesn't it like cool the body, and also in like the event of trauma makes things slip off you? So
exactly, mate. 100%. Two things: it cools you down more effectively, which means we can use more energy for longer periods of time. We don't overheat. And secondly, it made us slippery, so our prey would find us harder to catch. So these are all evolutionary responses that we have to stress. Okay, the liver. Right? The liver increases the rate of glycogen to glucose. What that means is the liver releases sugar into our bloodstream. Why? Because we use sugar really quickly for energy. Right? Makes sense. Okay. Why do we need the energy? Because again, when we were stressed, we would need to run away or remove ourselves from a stressful situation. All right. Our digestive system slows down when we're stressed. Why? Because that's wasted energy. Yeah. We don't need to be digesting food when we're running away from a saber-toothed tiger. We do that when we're relaxed. Okay. Right. Adrenal glands, we stimulate adrenaline. Yeah. Uterus, vaginal contraction. We decrease our ability, our bodies need to pee because that's wasted energy. So these things all happen during stressful environments. And then the opposite happens when we're in a relaxed state, you know. So that's just an interesting concept. The nervous system works completely differently depending on what state that we're in. Okay. So a lot of people that are stressed, they have digestive system issues because their digestive system doesn't work well when they're stressed because the nervous system switches it off. Okay, so once you understand the balance between these two systems, you start to really see what's going on. Yeah, stress leads to weight gain. Why? Because when you're stressed, your liver puts more sugar into your bloodstream. Now, if you're not burning that sugar, what happens to that excess energy? So I'm stressed, my body releases more sugar. I don't burn that sugar, gets stored as fat. Yeah, and that's how we gain weight. Right? So stressful environments help us to lead to weight gain. So everything is related here. Okay? That's why understanding the ability to relax and switch off and calm down this nervous system is so important. Okay? Alrighty, guys. Last one, and then we'll take a quick 5-minute break. I know we're working hard here. 3 adaptations, neuromuscular adaptations for exercise. Okay, so the first neuromuscular component is the motor units. Okay, the nerves sending the signals to our muscles. Okay, so that's a single nerve and all the muscle fibers it innervates. The long-term adaptation of that is we can complete a specific movement more efficiently and with less effort. Okay. The second one, guys, I've talked about this already, is proprioception. This is the sense of self-movement and body position awareness. Long-term adaptations, we improve this. And then there's a last component here, guys, called reciprocal inhibition. So I'll just explain this and I'll leave this up for a couple of minutes, guys, and you can finish this off and we'll take a 5-minute break, okay? So what reciprocal inhibition means is that when one muscle contracts, the opposite muscle has to relax for the contraction to take place, okay? If you're doing a bicep curl, the bicep muscle is contracting, the tricep muscle has to relax for the bicep muscle to move. Does that make sense? If the bicep and tricep contract at the same time, the arm doesn't move, right? So that's what's called reciprocal inhibition. When one muscle contracts, the opposite muscle relaxes, okay? And long-term adaptations of that is we can use that to help improve our flexibility, right? We're stretching opposing muscle groups, improves our flexibility.